We're here with Nick Lundquist, BJJ brown belt, personal trainer, and knee specialist. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. How are you, Dr. Ray?
Yeah, doing really well, thanks. You have an interesting background. So tell me, you grew up wrestling, correct?
I actually started jiu-jitsu before
Oh,
wrestling.
you did?
Yeah, my grappling career was like kind of topsy-turvy, opposite of what most people do.
Okay. Tell me how you got started in jiu-jitsu.
I was in college and a couple guys came down to the rock wall I was working at and they were into jiu-jitsu. They invited me to their house and they had mats in their living room. And it was just with their roommates and some of their friends. And they just said, all right, it's trying to make the other person give up without hitting them.
Oh,
And they said, go. And that was like my first introduction to submission wrestling.
that sounds like it could have been pretty rough.
It was some scraps, but it was very fun. And that very first night, I'd been watching UFC for a long time, so I knew what some submissions were. I put a rear naked choke on, as ugly as it probably was, but it was like I was hooked after that.
How did wrestling come into the picture?
So when I was in Seattle, the high school that I was working at, they needed another wrestling coach, and I'd been doing jujitsu for about 4.5 years. I was a blue belt at Bryan's, and heard they needed another wrestling coach. I thought, what a great way to improve my stand-up game for jiu-jitsu. So I hopped on the coaching staff, and for the first 4 years of that, I just did the wrestling practices with the kids essentially. And I coached there for 7 years. I'd say that my wrestling ability now is like a state level high school wrestler. Probably not
I
winning
see.
state, but I'd make it to
Yeah,
the tournament and maybe win a match or two, which helped a ton in jiu-jitsu.
yeah, I can attest to that. You're an absolute monster on the mat. In addition to your great jiu-jitsu, you have amazing wrestling. Hats off to the high school wrestling program.
It was interesting getting to go from jiu-jitsu to wrestling rather than the other way around. So I
Right.
had jiu-jitsu as my foundation, and then I sprinkled wrestling into my foundation of jiu-jitsu rather than sprinkling jiu-jitsu into my wrestling. So I felt like it really helped out the jiu-jitsu. It didn't help out my wrestling as much as I got pinned a lot for those first 4 years.
Yeah, I can imagine. Of course, in wrestling, you never play off your back either, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then, so what led you to sustain a knee injury? Maybe walk us through that.
Yeah, my only big knee injury happened actually when I was 12. Yeah, I was in middle school in PE. We were playing basketball, and someone tripped onto my foot, and then my knee bent sideways, and I broke my femur and dislocated my kneecap.
That is major trauma to the. And at that time, I'm assuming you got regular PT and to rehab, get that back to functioning as best as possible.
Yeah, so because of that break and everything, it resulted in actually 4 surgeries across 3 years. So the first surgery was to set the bone and everything, and that went well, but the break was actually through the growth plate. And since I was so young, my leg was still growing, but half of that growth plate started dying. So my
Wow.
leg started to bow. So then we had to have a second surgery to see if they could bring that growth plate back to life. So they took some fat from behind my knee, put it into the growth plate to see if it would take. It didn't, that surgery didn't work. So then what they did, they put an external fixator on, it's like a bar on the outside of your leg. I had 3 pins at my knee, 3 pins at my hip, and a bar connecting those pins on the outside of my leg. I couldn't bend my knee at all. It was like that for 6 months. And during those 6 months, there was a little motor on that bar, and it would put a pin into my bone and break the bone, and then the motor would stretch. And it pulled my bone apart about maybe 3/4 of an inch, what the growth plate would have grown, right? So they drilled the growth plate out. They lengthened my bone artificially for what the growth plate would have done. And then that bar acted as my bone for 6 months as the bone just filled in, as it grew back together. Yeah.
That's that's intense. I'm thinking wrestling and jujitsu stuff. Gosh, you've been through it, brother.
Yep, 4 knee surgeries at such a young age, a lot of physical trauma. And then as I've become an adult, unloaded maybe some mental trauma too that came along with that.
To walk us through how that affected you physically from the time you were 12 to when you started jiu-jitsu and things like that. And how did it affect your day to day? Did it affect you athletically?
Yeah, it definitely had a lot of impact on everything. After 8th grade, I was still recovering for multiple years, just trying to gain strength back, gain my whole knee flexion back. That took years. I wasn't really able to play sports like I'd wanted to. I was always an athlete growing up, and I was just an athletic kid. I loved being physical. Those were really tough years, not being able to do those sorts of things. But then eventually, by the end of high school, I was playing sports again, like recreationally. I was skateboarding a lot, and I had a little bit of a limp, and my knee would just be tired. It wasn't as strong as the other one. It would get sore. And I was young, so I didn't really think a whole lot of that. And then going through college, it was about the same as that. I still played club sports, and I went rock climbing a lot and hiking, and rarely did it give me huge problems. It was just sore and a little weaker. And then after college, as I went into adulthood, then it felt like it just continually got worse, like more and more pain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so throughout that time, I would imagine you had some level of exercises, rehab that you're following through with to try to improve the function of your knee.
As a kid, like right around the time of the surgeries, I was going to a lot of PT, just your regular PT in the hospital. Did that for a long time. But then high school through college, I really didn't do any sort of PT or leg exercises. I avoided lifting any sort of leg anything because I didn't want to irritate my knee at all. So I would go in the weight room and I would do upper body stuff, but never would I squat or do lunges, anything like that to work my lower body.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You transitioned from that, where you were like in college and whatnot, to finding a different approach to knee injuries.
So it was like the very, very beginning of COVID, and my knee and my back were at their worst. I think the knee injury had basically migrated up into my back because I was just compensating in other areas. I was weak in certain areas, and I was just in a lot of pain a lot of the time. I thought I was going to quit jiu-jitsu, thought I was going to quit wrestling, and just have to give up those areas and athletics in general. I thought, you know what, maybe this athletic life isn't for me, and I'm just going to have to play chess.
Okay.
Uh,
And
not
that
that
must have been really hard.
Oh, yeah, very hard because I find so much joy in movement and in
Yes.
games, and it's just a really good creative outlet for me. So I was really bummed about that. And then I saw on Instagram Ben Patrick, who's the founder of Knees Over Toes, and he was doing movements that I'd never seen before. And he was just talking what seemed to me like it made a lot of sense.
Okay.
Since I was like at my rope's end, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna buy the program. I've got nothing to lose, and I bought it as a birthday present to myself. I just started doing that program, and even after the very first exercise, I just felt some blood flow in probably an area that hadn't had blood flow in a very long time.
Oh.
And from that moment, I was like, all right, there's something to this.
What would you say are two or three things that you took away from that program that you live by when you work with clients that have the issue that something that you would highly recommend people implement?
Yeah, I think the concept of reversing yourself out of pain is a really good concept. Meaning, if you have pain walking down the stairs, you need to strengthen the motion of going in the exact opposite direction. So actually face the way you would be going down the stairs, but then go up the stairs backwards. And so that same concept, if you have pain throwing forwards, how we want to strengthen is the motion backwards. And that was, I feel like I can, even if I don't know what my pain is coming from, or if I have a title for the injury, or I know the body part, if I can find the motion that causes me pain, I can find an exercise to do in the opposite direction. And that has helped me a ton in any sort of ache and pain that I've had.
That's a key principle. I think that's so important to highlight. I definitely subscribe to that as well with my patients. Are there any other ones that you would recommend?
I think another one that is really a key component to the knees over toes program is the regression, right? Even if a certain lift is the correct lift that you need to be doing, if you're not regressing it to the right place that your ability level, then it's the wrong movement. So if you're too progressed in that movement, if you're trying to do something that is too difficult, then that could injure you more, right? So regressing it all the way till it seems like almost easy, like this is almost too easy, that's where you want to be for a long time, right? And build that foundation and own that spot. So it's like perfect form. You could do this cold without a warm up. That's your cue. I can go on, I can progress that movement now, make it a little more difficult. And very slowly and incrementally, you progress to those movements. Yeah, I think those are the two probably biggest cues of like pain. If I ever uncomfortable or soreness, I'm okay with, or muscle fatigue, that's fine. If it's a sharp pain, I'm going to make it easier. I don't want them moving through any sort of pain. And then if they aren't able to do the correct form, that's the other one. I'm like, we're going to make this easier so you can do it correctly. Because if you build that habit of incorrect form at this level, that's not good. I want perfect form.
Yeah, if you try to work through things and force things, it's just reinforcing that poor movement pattern, right?
And you're missing a weak link there.
Yes.
We're only as strong as our weakest link. So if we're skipping over progressing too quickly and we skipped over this link at the end of the chain, it's still there and we haven't addressed it. So we need to back out and figure out, why are you bypassing that section of the lift? Why are you going faster through that little section? I'm going to slow you down in that. I'm going to make you live in that section of the lift to strengthen that weak link.
I see. Would it be perhaps in the squat, maybe the lunge, or?
Yes. One of the big lifts that ATG or knees over toes is known for is the ATG split squat. And it's a full range of motion, single leg split squat where your knee goes way past your toes and it's put into the very end range of its flexion. And if I see someone either shaking a ton at any point during the lift, sometimes I'll back them out and make them live in that shake for a little bit, or I'll regress them and I'll elevate their foot a lot so they don't have to go as deeply, so they can focus in on that beginning portion wherever they were shaking a lot. Or if they feel like a twinge of uncomfortable, they just feel weak in that spot, that's my cue. That's a weak link, and we need to target that and bring that up to the rest of the chain.
I work with a lot of strength coaches and personal trainers myself, and I think that it's a vital key in getting a person back to where they need to be functionally. What would you say in reverse when you feel, even for yourself, like if one of our teammates gets hurt, their knees bothering, what would you say is the time for them to say, hey, look, maybe you can do this on your own, do some of the over toes approach versus, hey, you probably need to see someone and get that looked at, diagnosed, treated, and then maybe come back?
Yeah, I think that if you can walk, then you should be able to start the knees over toes program. It's that regressible. Like you could do it with an 80-year-old if you're trained in how to regress all these movements to the easiest possible setting, right? And as long as you're not experiencing active sharp pain through any of the movements, then that's okay. But if you feel like there's something wrong, then yeah, you should probably get that checked out. But sometimes, like, even if there is something wrong, the doctor says you just need to rest and ice. And that's good to some extent. I think probably a shorter amount of time than what may be suggested, and start getting blood flow into those areas and trying to heal them. And that still becomes gently. It's not like I'm going to go do squats. It's I'm going to regress that movement. How do I do it as easy as possible, but get blood flow into those injured areas?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Movement is medicine.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
ways, of course.
Yeah.
Were there times in your journey with your knee where things flared up really bad and it can cross your mind? You're like, oh no, like maybe I should hang it up, and maybe walk us through how mentally challenging that was and how you got through that.
After I started the knees over toes program, I didn't really have any huge flare ups. I had a couple times where I pushed in the workout a bit harder than maybe I should have because I just wanted to see my upper limits. I wanted to see how strong I was. And I had made great progress already. I was doing the split squats with weights, and I just wanted to see how much weight I could move. But I never got to the point where mentally I was like, oh, this isn't, I guess I am back to, I'm still not fixed. I still should probably not do jiu-jitsu and stuff, because I felt like once I had that program and had such success with it, I felt enabled to, or empowered to be able to fix my injuries a lot more. I felt way more in control, and it kind of shifted my perspective on injuries and understanding that injuries still happen. I'm still a human being and our bodies are breaking down actively. But I feel like I've got this tool set now of movements and concepts that I can use to heal my body or at least mitigate the pain. So I think that the thought of quitting has not really come across my mind so much since I started.
Oh, that's great. Look, that's awesome to hear. And anyone who's listening to this, I hope it gives them some hope too, that there's always ways to figure out how to train. With
Mm-hmm.
your knee, has it changed your game at all? Do you not play certain guards because of it?
I'd say with my knee, not so much. I'll do it all. I'll stand and I'll wrestle and I get into scrambles. The one position that I actively avoid at all costs, though, is a stack pass. If me getting stack passed with my low back, I'm fairly certain I've got some sort of bulging disc, and I know that aggravates it. Any sort of weight in that very folded position. So anytime someone gets double unders on my legs, I instantly start to turtle. I'll just roll for them and don't let them put any weight on. So that's my one position that I actively avoid is a stack pass.
Yeah, I think most of us try to avoid that. It's not the
Yes.
most
Yep.
comfortable position.
It's tough because it's a good pass.
It is. If this or athlete has a knee issue that comes up, what would your advice be to them?
My advice would be to strengthen around the knee and get lots of blood flow. If it were a certain movement that you're looking for, I would just say start walking backwards. I think that's the entry level movement that incorporates quite a few concepts throughout knees over toes. And you can do it anywhere with zero equipment. So super beginner friendly. But yeah, walking backwards is a really good one, I think, and has a lot of benefits, especially like outside of jiu-jitsu. I think walking backwards allows you, as we get older, like elderly, to be able to continue walking forwards unassisted, right? And I want to walk forwards without a cane or a walker until the day I die. And so I kind of think about every step that I take backwards right now is a step forwards later in life. I'm just racking up as many steps as possible.
When you say walk backwards, are you walking on flat surfaces, on the inclines, or a bit of both?
I'd say both. The more inclined, the more difficult it's going to be. So that'd be a progression. The regression would be flat ground. If walking backwards on flat ground is still too hard for you, then walking backwards in a pool would be even regressed from there. less weight. So that's where you could start, right? And then the progression, like incline, or you could start walking backwards, pulling a sled. Or if you have a partner, you get a towel and you each hold on to the end of the towel and you walk backwards and you provide that resistance for each other. So there's lots of ways to progress these movements, again, without equipment, really, which is another really nice thing about the whole program.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Those are some really good tips and just easy, simple things people can definitely implement tomorrow if they wanted to. If people want to find out more about you, seek you out for maybe training and whatnot, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I've got an Instagram. It's called Nick Knows Knees. That's my fitness page. There are quite a few silly videos on there, but also sprinkled in are some technique videos about knee health and then also jiu-jitsu and grappling.
Oh, that's perfect. I'll definitely attach those links when I upload this video and whatnot.
Okay.
Now, in closing, what does jiu-jitsu mean to you?
Jiu-jitsu to me, I think it feels like the natural flow of energy. I really chase that feeling of the natural flow of energy. It's kind of like surfing, like you're being pushed by the wave and you're becoming one with that and you're using the wave. And I get that feeling when I hit sweeps and you feel that tipping point. That's the feeling that I really chase. It's much less for me about the submission. Submissions are fun, but I really chase the off balancing feeling. It's just such a good feeling in my entire body. I feel like just very connected and it just feels very natural.
That's beautiful. And then lastly, you're a brown belt now, goes to your black belt. What would you tell your white belt self as a
I would tell my white belt self to de-escalate. To any chance you get, de-escalate.
so don't go as hard.
I think I knew that I was never going to be some world champion competitor or something, and I should have recognized that the training style doesn't always necessitate that type of intensity. Even though it's fun, sometimes there's a big cost to it for you or a partner. So I think that training like you're 20 years older than you are is probably a good move.
I think I'm a big believer, and you'll hear me say that time and time again, the goal is not to win every role, it's to train tomorrow.
Yes,
So
yes,
I think
yes.
really monitoring our intensity and volume, like the amount we roll as well as how intensely we roll, is important in terms of longevity, especially. I don't know about you, I want to be like in my 80s and 90s and still on the mat.
Yes, in some
It's going to look a lot
capacity.
different, but Nick, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you, brother. Miss you on the mat, but we'll get this out. Hopefully, it will help a lot of people, and hopefully, people will connect with you if they want some personalized attention or have questions when it comes to kind of rehabbing their knees and getting back on the mat.
I miss you and the whole academy and can't wait to get back up there. And thanks again for having me. This is an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. But right back at you, brother.
Okay.
Talk soon.
Okay. Sounds good.